Welcome aboard. This is Captain G with episode 8, Order of Battle, the British Commonwealth. Setting the stage, we all know that the UK was one power in Axis and Allies until Global Pacific added the Far East Command as a separate economy and ANZAC as a separate power. The Global War series obviously expanded on that as well. So building from that, I have pieces for all 5 economies and nations of the game. Starting with the infantry class, militia in kneeling, crouching, firing positions. We have first our British militia, our Indian Army Far East Command militia, and then with a brown highlight, but all units in a base tan coat, Canada militia with their green highlight, ANZAC militia, and then South Africa with the yellow highlight. Brown, green, yellow highlights touch something on the unit, continues to designate that for all units moving forward. For infantry out of box, infantry for Great Britain, or I'll just say the British from now on to be concise. Indian Army for the Far East Command. Canadian unit, brown rifle, ANZAC green backpack, and then the South African sculpt, but still yellow highlight in the back. 2 British and ANZAC Marine units with the blue base. I haven't seen Canada use Marines yet, and I know South Africa won't. For elite infantry, black base. On the left I have the British Commandos, HBG sculpt, mounted on the NATO Commando marker. Picked that one rather than the World War II era. Again, love the design of the World War II one, but I did not want to get a marker that I would cover up and never see. So I wanted to be able to see Commando. For the Gurkhas, for Far East Command, picked up some out-of-box ANZAC infantry, and they became my Gurkha sculpts. Airborne, I have just the one sculpt, same sculpt as the US. Have not found a need for ANZAC Canadian or any other type of airborne. I haven't set up any elite airborne unit yet, but I'll probably take a couple and give them the black and white cookie treatment. 1 mountain infantry sculpt for the entire Commonwealth. I do have 2 separate colonial infantry units with the orange base. First is the British colonial infantry, and then the second one, different sculpt, but also the green highlight, ANZAC colonial infantry. According to what I've seen in the version 4 rules, those are the only 2 Commonwealth powers with colonial infantry. Artillery class units, front row are the British FEC units, and then second row, if there's a different sculpt, the Canada, South Africa, ANZAC. Starting with the house rules, fixed position, AAA, and then the British out-of-box AAA. The ANZAC Pacific 1940 anti-air, picked up some of those on HBG when they were available, and initially had them for Italy, but then when Italian anti-air came available, I gave them back to the Commonwealth, and now Canada, South Africa, as well as Australia uses that as their anti-air. Again, a return from Italy. Initially, these field artillery units were given to Italy, and Great Britain used American Lend-Lease artillery like the Soviets. When Italy got their own combat miniatures unit, these came back to Great Britain, and then ANZAC, Canada, and South Africa use this HBG sculpt, very similar but a little different. Heavy artillery with the red, self-propelled artillery, blue, and advanced self-propelled, red. Going to the vehicle class units, just cavalry for the British. Haven't seen anyone else need any yet, so I have no color variations of that. Same with our house rule armored cars. Motorized infantry, same sculpt, just with different color back and different decals for Canada and ANZAC. For mechanized infantry, I did have some variation here. I love the HBG sculpt, and then what I used was I picked up a handful of out-of-box UK sculpts for South Africa, and then Canada and ANZAC both use the Australian mech infantry from Pacific 1940. The advanced mechanized infantry for Britain. For tank destroyers, Canada, South Africa, and ANZAC still have the classic Axis and Allies armor with the orange barrel to designate tank destroyers. I mentioned, I think on an earlier video, all the other powers have had theirs replaced with different sculpts, but I left those alone. I did do with the UK what I did not do and wanted to do with Japan, which is I took the out-of-box armor, the Matildas, made them light tanks, and then I supplemented the out-of-box Shermans, which I gave to the UK as Fireflies, with some HBG medium armor, and then I picked up HBG light armor for the other Commonwealth countries for their light armor. For heavy armor, this was a sculpt that I had left from the repurposed America Heavies that I gave to all the different countries. It has not been built yet. If it does, and it becomes an issue, I'm not 100% happy with it because it is obviously supposed to be a self-propelled artillery unit. I'm just using it as a heavy tank because I needed something at the time. I may replace it later, but it works for now. And then our house rule unit, the Amphibious Tanks. These always make me think of D-Day, since this is where I saw them a lot in historical pictures. If you watch the US version, you saw the version of the amphibious tank I gave to the Marine Corps. So I gave these to the British for them to use in their version of D-Day. Moving on to air units, out-of-box Spitfires, yellow tips for the fighters, British jet fighters with the red tips, and then Axis and Allies classic fighters with orange tips become the tactical bombers. Do have a couple variations of seaplanes for Canada and ANZAC from the version I use for Great Britain. For transports, classic Axis and Allies air transport bomber that many countries have used, and then I picked up an HBG British bomber and made it the heavy transport. The Halifax and Lancaster bombers out of box, used by all the Commonwealth countries that have medium bombers. Wanted something different for strategic bombers, and since I'd already used the main HBG British bomber for my heavy transports, because I hadn't had strategic bombers until recently, I went ahead and used some Lend-Lease B-17s from the US. And then this Vickers bomber, which I loved the unique design of it, this became my heavy strategic bomber. Little fun, little flavor for the British. Going now to the Royal Navy. Axis and Allies 1941, lots of unique sculpts. So all of the Allied transports I gave to the Commonwealth, different color patterns, and then I augmented when I felt I needed some more from HBG. This is HBG's 3D sculpt for, I think, a seaplane tender. That is the British assault transport. This is torpedo boat destroyer with the gray. three types of destroyers in green. The middle one is the primary one for the British fleet. The Royal Navy uses that one. I did take a handful of American sculpt destroyers and paint them khaki for the British as Lend-Lease units to the Royal Navy. And then again, Axis and Allies 1941. Axis destroyers that Japan and Germany frankly didn't need. I gave those to the other Commonwealth countries for their destroyers. Out of the box cruisers from Axis and Allies. Primary cruiser for the Royal Navy with color patterns for Canada and ANZAC. 1941 battleships serve as my heavy cruisers. The King George battleship from HBG is my battle cruiser. Coastal defense ship. Out-of-box battleship for the Royal Navy battleship. Love the HMS Rodney and Nelson sculpt. Those are my fast battleships. And then the heavy battleship. Submarines, some coastal submarines, out-of-box submarines for the Royal Navy, and a handful of advanced submarines. I haven't seen them built yet. And then I wanted the Royal Navy carriers to have something distinct, so I decided to use flight deck stickers, which I had not used for any other power. I really liked the way they came out. So they cover the magnetic tape that gives the carrier a cleaner look, which is nice. So purple tip for the light escort carriers. I think that is HBG's American Escort sculpt, but I used it for, I think I used it for France as well as for the UK. Out-of-box fleet carrier for the Commonwealth, and then the advanced carrier. And that is the entire order of battle for the British Commonwealth. All 5 economies, countries. And because there's so many and such a wide variety, I do have 2 boxes, Canada, South Africa, and ANZAC in one, and Great Britain and the Far East Command in the other. This has been Captain G. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Over and out.